Today I'm joined by another absolutely fabulous woman. I'm joined by Teresa. Teresa enjoys hanging out with friends and family, and when she's not chilling with her friends and family, she works as the peer navigation lead at Kiind. She has lived experience supporting a family member with a diagnosis, and most importantly, she's a dog person, which is helped because she's allergic to cats, so she never had to go into the debate. Thanks so much for joining me today, Teresa.
No, thank you. You're very welcome.
Fab. All right, so today, so I'm going to start with just a little bit of a preface in saying that for those of you who don't know, I am a crier, and today's topic might be a little bit too close to home, and I may cry. And if I do, I'm really sorry. I'll do my best to pull it back together. I have warned Teresa before we've started. I've got my tissues next to me, and we're ready to go. So,
And you know what? Sorry, I was just going to say, let those tears go because it's a wonderful way of, releasing emotions and it's all very natural. And if you're a crier, just cry. Just
yeah.
cry, girlfriend.
Oh, trust me, I do. Don't worry. And again, I think it's okay to not be okay. It's okay that however many decades on, things can still hurt and it can be not be okay. So today
Absolutely.
we're talking about what it's like when a loved one gets a diagnosis and how that impacts you and how we, I guess, where we can go for support, those types of things. So being a peer navigation lead, tell me what peer navigation lead actually means.
Yeah, so I mean, I love it. It's a wonderful role for me because what it does is it links families in with someone who just gets it. So we are all peers. We have lived the experience. We've walked the pathway, and the navigation side of the role is that we support families to figure out what the next steps might be for them. So having a bit of a chat and seeing where they can be supported to take those next steps. So it might be, even pre-diagnosis, diagnosis, they might have been on the journey for a while and just need that next transition step. So it's walking alongside someone to say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? This might be available to you. You might be eligible for this kind of support. So it's really a journey of supporting and sort of plugging in needs for families.
And I think that's so important. So through the last 20 years, so many times I've been told different things. You need to do this, you need to understand this, that type of thing. But you're being told by somebody who's, and I know this is going to sound terrible, but you're being told by somebody who's 20 with no life experience, let alone no experience walking in the path that you're walking. And so having somebody who is ever going to have walked in your shoes. Everybody's experience is different. So even if you've got two people who have got the exact same diagnosis, their experience is going to be different. But at least having someone who you can talk to who goes, do you know what? Let me get in the hole with you is so valuable rather than, well, you need to get yourself out of the hole because this needs to happen. Any idea on how I get myself out of the hole?
Exactly, exactly. And, like you were saying, everybody's journey is different, but there's so much commonality in the process it took to get into the hole and how, the person could be supported to get out of the hole, um, can be very similar.
Mm.
And so having someone who, has maybe had needed to go into battle with the health system or had lots of questions around the education system, who are navigating NDIS. Uh,
Okay, there's a trauma response to the NDIS.
yeah, so, it's just I mean, there's so many benefits. It's having someone along for the journey that understands it's, okay, what has your community learnt and can share with you? And also, what is it that we need to share as a community to make things better for those coming behind us as well? There's a powerful force behind coming together and supporting one another, making the whole seem less deep
Yeah.
for all of us.
there's a couple of things I want to touch on, but before I do, I want to just add something to my statement before. Do you know? So I spoke about the 20-year-old with no experience telling me what I needed to do, how I needed to feel, how I needed to behave. That's the same. It doesn't matter if that person's 20, 40, 60, whatever. When they haven't walked that or have a similar experience, to be able to, for you to feel as though, do you know what, I get you.
Yeah.
It's still, it's just so powerful to have somebody, regardless of their experience or whatever, somebody who just gets it,
Hmm.
and somebody who you can empathize all you want, but until you've actually had to go into battle with the health department, or until you've had to navigate, I don't even know if navigate's the right word for the NDIS, you can't get it.
No, no. And it's everyone's experience and everyone's what they're bringing to the table as well. So, it's very easy for someone behind a desk to say, yeah, just fill in this form and we'll let you know later with the outcome of this form. But it's the worry that's behind it. It's the
It's the
um,
27 pages of the damn form that's behind it.
exactly. And we've already touched on, everyone's journey is a little bit different. So having a peer understands that you might need a little help with your communication style. So whether, families are coming with their own diagnosis, families are coming with literacy challenges. They might be refugees or coming from another country where English might be their second, third, fourth language. They might be in the process of, some sort of court proceeding. There's multi dimensions to worry and stress for some families. And so being able to just talk your truth and be comfortable and know that the person, yeah, isn't going to judge you and's got a bit of an understanding of what it's taken to get to this point, if you're having a conversation. Yeah. And sometimes, yeah, those people who haven't lived it, yeah, just really, like you say, they've got empathy. They can be very kind, but then the knowledge behind peer support is really powerful.
Definitely. One of the things that you spoke about was the commonalities. So when somebody has a family member who is first diagnosed, and that can be kind of any diagnosis, so we're talking about whether that's a disability of any kind or a diagnosis for ADHD or autism or, whatever that might be, what do you think some of the most common reactions are that you would have seen or worked with?
I think one of the big ones is around grief. So, if we're talking a diagnosis soon after birth, maybe, but even, whatever point of time it is down the journey, to be honest, is the grief around, I had a plan for all of us, and now that pathway has changed. And the you're not even in the moment of, what's going to happen for all of us and what supports do I need. It's that immediate, this isn't what I planned. What is this going to mean for all of us as a family? And I think the overwhelm of some of the information that families get. So, some families are coming out of those diagnosis meetings, or they might get a letter and it's just your child's got this. If they're lucky, here's some supports that you can make contact with.
If they're lucky.
Yeah. But yeah, there's some families where they've been given their child's diagnosis on a post-it note and sort of sent on their way. So
That's
you're
funny. So
managing.
I have a couple of autoimmune conditions, and one of them, yeah, exactly that. I was diagnosed on a post-it note and told go home and Google it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Google is a great doctor and a great way of sharing all of the options that's available to you. Yeah, yeah, Google, wonderful option. Yeah, and I think that they're managing the grief, they're managing and I think a lot of parents go into that. I need to know as much as possible about this, so I can support my child or my family member. And so there's that instant, oh God, I don't know enough about this. What am
Yeah.
I what am I going to do? Where are we going to go from here? we need to reach out to all of these supports. I need to get more help. And I think the commonality in a lot of journeys is that information gathering, because we think, okay, I need to know as much as possible. We go from not needing to be therapists or doctors
Yep.
to deep diving into the internet or as much as information as we can find. And yeah, it's just a learning curve.
Mm.
And we've had so many, phone calls with families where, we sort of say, we don't have to talk about too much. I don't want to overwhelm you. We can have as many phone calls as you need. And families are like, no, give me everything. I want to know everything. Give me it all. And so, they've got the grief of the diagnosis, the expectation, the grief of not everyone being on the same ride as
Yeah.
you or the same journey as you. So, the complexity of having friends and family members not agree or not understand. So some parents can feel a little bit alone and have that isolation as well, which I think is quite common and a shared experience. And yeah, that really need for information gathering, trying to learn as much as possible, which is, you know, what you need to do because, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And the outcome of that, though, is, if you're trying to work and support the family, and then essentially you're getting a university degree of some kind as well. And yeah, the internet cannot be a great space if that's your option for looking for information.
Yeah.
And, there's so many people out there that are on the internet at 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning because that's their time that they've got to spend to do this, or they've just been up all night worrying, or they've been up all night
Yeah.
looking after the medical needs of their small person. So, well, and bigger people too.
Mm.
I say little people quite a lot, but I mean in the general sense that your child is always your child,
Yes.
and no matter if they are 5 or, in my
95.
family's case, 89,
Yeah.
they are still that person's bubby
Yeah.
and child. So the journey, this learning and supporting and finding out what else is possible is lifelong. It's a
Yeah.
it's a marathon, not a
Yeah.
sprint.
So there's a couple of things there, and that grief I think is really, it needs to be valid. It needs to be validated. So I remember when, and I am oversharing, and I said I wouldn't, but I remember when my daughter was diagnosed, and we were going through all of the kind of stuff, and it's that the child that you thought you had and the life that you envisioned for them, that's gone now, because now their life is going to have challenges, and now they're going to have additional obstacles and additional barriers that other children don't have, and so that's really sad. It's really hard to hear that your child is going to, their life is going to be more difficult than the rest of the people in their class.
Yeah.
And so you are grieving that the life that you had expected, that's gone and something else has been replaced. And I was trying to articulate that with a health professional, a doctor who was very high up, who said, what are you complaining about? Your child isn't going to die. If you want to know people who have the right to feel the way that you're saying you feel, go and stand in the oncology department at PMH and then put something into perspective.
Oh gosh.
And we didn't go back to that doctor, but no, you don't get to do that. Just because somebody else is harder than your hard, doesn't make your hard any less hard.
Mm.
And it doesn't make what you're going through any less valid. It's, yeah, so if you are kind of at the beginning, take time to grieve what you thought this romantic picture about parenting was going to look like, because it's going to be different.
Absolutely.
And the other thing, yep, so go for it.
I know, no, I was just going to say, and yeah, reach out because there are supports for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to do the grieving alone, that there is help out there. So reach out when you need it.
Which so many mums are so good at doing. And the other thing that came up is that information gathering. And that's such a fine line, isn't it? So when you were speaking, I'm sort of thinking, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. You don't have to learn it all now. I think there's kind of two ways that people go. Either they need to know everything or they stick their head in the sand and they don't want to know anything. Both totally valid. But so sort of straddling that, you don't need to know it right now. So if this is something that's going to impact you for the rest of your life, then you've got the rest of your life to learn about it. But balancing that with also early intervention is so important.
Yeah, and I think I think that comes back again to, finding a peer navigation service or chatting to a peer that you can link into can be really helpful. It's being able to ask someone, what do I need to know now? And what do I need to know in the future? What is important and what can I kind of let slide? I mean, the very adorable conversations that I've had over the years is a family start asking a question about employment and different kinds of options for high schools. And so you sort of go into a very, detailed conversation about what the options are. And then you might not have got to it, but then you sort of say, also, so how old is the person we're talking about?
7
3.
months. Yeah.
And then you have to do a bit of okay, well, yeah, we don't need to know that in detail, but just know that there's some lovely supports for employment when that little person gets there. But let's have a chat about, what's available now. And I think getting supports early for yourself and for your child is really helpful. But also, I like to share with families that there's lots of information that can be had and lots of learning and lots of lovely things that can happen in all of those life transition phases as well. So it's great to be involved, get those early supports and what you think you might need. And I think this is a lovely spot to talk about, and we talk about it all the time, is to go as a parent and or carer, go with your gut instinct. So whatever, you are the knowledge holder of that person, you know them best, you've probably already started to be their therapist because you've noticed what makes their life a little easier in certain sensory environments. You've learned a little bit about what makes them comfortable physically. If we're talking about someone who needs support for mobility, you've got an idea of what's going to suit them. Trust your instincts, gather the information, and then do what you think is going to be best for your family.
I actually just had that conversation with a mum this morning, and she was just saying, she goes, I've been his mum for 18 years. I know that this is what he needs, and now I need to get other people to actually listen to me. But this is what he needs, this is what he needs to be doing, because this is where he thrives. This is where he's in his zone of genius. She didn't use those words, but that's what she meant. So now we need to find a way to create the space for him to be there. But it was just really lovely that she acknowledged that I've been his parent for 18 years. I am the one who knows him best, and those external service providers, they don't. So, and when I had my first child, it was a midwife who was studying to be a counsellor who told me, don't ever call a doctor. Call them by their first name. Don't put them in a position of power. When you are walking into a doctor's surgery, you hold the power because you get to make the decision. And I was just reminded about that when you were speaking, because that's exactly right. Do your research, know what you want, and then advocate for that, because you're the person who ultimately makes that choice.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's great. And I think I do that as well. I'm terrible. My GP is just her first name.
Yeah.
Because I'm going in to see another lady to talk about, what I need and how can she support me to get what I need.
Yeah. That's exactly it. But I don't think that's terrible. I think that's really powerful. I think more people should do that, and more people should be encouraged to be their own advocate, and particularly when they're being an advocate for somebody who has additional needs, we need the support to say, actually, no, right now, you get to be the person who's holding the power. You are the decision maker.
Mm. And I think part of what we do in our support service as well is build that uh, capacity within parents and carers to say, no, you can ask for that. And it can sometimes it's just as simple as that. Families saying, oh, we're thinking this and we'd like that. We're not sure if that's possible. Ask. No point asking.
That's it. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Exactly. And if you really feel like your child needs this particular kind of support, ask for 120% of what you're looking for, because
You might get 80.
you might get 80.
Yeah.
But if we start, be brave. Don't start at the 50,
Yeah.
because you might get the 50. But there's
Yeah.
no harm in asking. There's no harm in, going for everything that they need, because logistically and business wise, if it's not possible, they're going to tell you that. But if they've got some wiggle room, let's figure out where the wiggle room is.
Yeah, that's it. Definitely. One of the other things that you mentioned is the isolation that lots of parents or lots of families go through.
Yeah, and it's such a big part of a lot of journeys and a lot of families that we speak with. I'm just thinking of a mum that I spoke to recently where, yeah, not everyone agreed with the child's diagnosis. So she was kind of doing this on her own. And when you feel like no one's got your back and is confrontational, then of course you're going to feel like, okay, this is your journey to be on by yourself. But there's lots of other things that lead to that feeling of isolation as well. I know of another particular example where, so it was a mum who was kind of just wanted to have a bit of a vent, because we all have vents.
Yes.
And we all need to release and we all need to share our bad days. And this person thought that they were venting with, a friend that was going to be supportive. But the friend said, oh, I don't understand why you just didn't put your child into an institution back in the day.
Oh.
And so, a lot of times it's isolation, that you don't want to be a burden to other people.
Yeah.
But in some ways, sometimes it's, that you outright being told, I'm not supportive of you, and where you're heading, or, it might be from their point of view that they don't have that experience, they don't know how to support. So yeah, isolation can come from many different areas. As parents and carers, we're like, no, we got this, we can do this, we're doing it on our own. We're not going to burden anybody. Yeah, so many different reasons where that isolation can come from.
I think also, though, you really raised that this is your job. So you should be able to hold it. And whether that's societal pressures or family pressure or it's just self-imposed, but you should be able to do this. This is what your role is. So just get on with it.
Yeah, and I always go back to, and again, we're talking about NDIS a little bit. It's not everybody's journey, not everyone is eligible, but I always go back to when we're talking about NDIS and sharing that, that whole concept of parental responsibility. And yes, there's parental responsibility, but how much extra parenting are you needing to do for your person? There's so much more that goes into it, and I think sometimes it can feel really like you're not being heard and not being seen when someone tells you that's parental responsibility.
Yeah.
And even a family with an adult child, I heard recently NDIS had said to them, oh, that's parental responsibility. You've got the ability to
They're
provide
42,
that
for God's sake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. In my family situation, parental responsibility is still going.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, the little person who's not so little is 59, and there's still parental responsibility.
Yeah.
When do parents get to have a little bit of a rest and a bit of a break?
And that's so hard, because you don't, like, my children will always be welcome in my home, and when they choose to leave home, they'll always be welcome to come back. And as you said earlier, I will always be their parent. At the same time, you do go into parenthood thinking at some point these people are going to be able to they're going to leave, they're going to get jobs, they're going to have families of their own, and my role will change. Not that when they're 59 I'm still going to be responsible for the daily care.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that swings back around to that grief.
Yeah.
You kind of go into this role thinking, yeah, with a little bit of a life plan.
Yeah.
And sometimes all of that, the adult life doesn't go according to that plan as well. And I think that, yeah, coming back to the especially around NDIS, parental responsibility, how I think parents and carers need to give themselves a massive warm hug and a pat on the back, because there's so much more that goes into parenting, when your person has a diagnosis, and you're doing an amazing job.
Mm.
Like you're above and beyond. There's there's parenting, and then there's supporting a child with a diagnosis. So, you know that you're doing an amazing job.
And know that when somebody says to you, God gives special children to special parents, you're not the first person to imagine stabbing them in the eye with a fork.
Exactly. Exactly.
Don't do it, don't act
Yeah.
on it, but know that other people have imagined doing it as
Yeah.
well.
And I think it's good to sort of have a bit of training, like self-training on what to say when people share those things, so that it's a bit of muscle memory.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's a whole other, conversation around grief as well, and those things that get shared after someone passes as well.
Mm.
It's very difficult, and I am very good in emergency situations. I am good in, I think, quite supportive if you are crying, but it might not be the best way to support. But I also feel very awkward and don't really know what to say in those really high stress, high grief moments. But I think it's great to, for yourself to have a little sentence ready for those times when it feels a bit awkward. And I think it doesn't have to be around grief. It doesn't have to be the really sad or emotional times. It can just be those everyday interactions at the supermarket when you're out and about. Have some things prepared that's going to be helpful and a learning opportunity for the people you're meeting, and also, really stirs up that advocacy part of you inside, so you feel really strong in those situations. Because I'm sure lots of listeners have had that experience
Mm.
where they've got, their person is just unable to cope with what's going on around them, and they're having a meltdown, and nothing you say in those moments is going to help them. So
Mm.
you just kind of got to ride it out and do, what you would normally do in those situations. It's the awkward conversations about, disability. Have a little answer ready so that you can be really strong in those moments, or feel stronger. Um, there's another example. Many, many years ago, I was chatting to someone, and they needed a Acrod vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were using an Acrod space because they had an electric wheelchair and other children. And someone else who wanted to use the Acrod bay came up and had a go at her and sort of said, well, you can walk. Why are you parking here? And so she said it took me a little moment to gather myself, but she had a conversation ready, a little
Mm.
bit in the muscle memory bank to say, well, actually, these are the reasons why it's totally okay for us to use it. Appreciate there's not a lot of ACROD bays. Why don't we all have a chat to centre management about providing more bays? Because obviously they need it if there's all of us trying to use these bays. I think centre management is the best option. So in that moment, she was kind of able to regroup a little bit, and she probably wanted to cry at that stage, but
Or swear.
yeah, that too, that
Yeah.
too. And it's, we don't always want to swear at the elderly. Sometimes we do. But yeah, you know, and you don't want to have to be, and I totally get it. You don't want to have to be the teacher all the time.
Yeah. It's
Being able
exhausting.
to, yeah, it is. All of it is exhausting.
Yeah.
So, but having some answers for people that you can kind of just whip out and get on with your day, because then that's one less thing that you have to, you know, go over or think about or get, worried or concerned about. Just helps you out a little bit.
And I think those answers, you can maybe have sort of 3 sets of answers. So answers for when you've got the spoons to be able to actually go through and share and educate and be able to have. So that's a really great example of how she took a really awkward, awful situation and made that a positive situation. The complete other side of that would have started with an F and ended at an F and would have possibly had a very different outcome. And then there's a middle option where you can go, we have an ACROD sticker and I don't need to engage in a conversation with you right now. Like, depending on where you're at, can depend on what you have the ability to be able to share with people. But knowing that it's never okay for people to challenge you, but what you do have control over, you have no control over the way that the people around you are going to respond. You have control over the way you respond.
Absolutely. And I think spoon theory is really great for this whole journey of being a carer. It's what have you got spoons for? Because if you aren't going well, if you don't have the energy, who's going to keep this train moving?
Yeah.
Self-care is important and it's the most important thing. And it's the analogy that we use all the time, but we put a big disclaimer on it. Yes, this is going to be just cringe. But if you don't put the oxygen mask on yourself first, you can't help anybody else. So, really thinking about what it is that you can give to the world today. And if it's just keeping things moving and just putting one foot in front of the other, that's awesome. You're doing great and you're keeping moving. It might be that it's a one step backwards day. So lean into who can support you and give you a spoon for that day. Or if you've got 5 spoons, yeah, then you can go out and you can
Take on the world.
exactly. And I was going to say, you might then be at that stage where you've got lots of spoons. So go out and be an advocate for other
Yeah.
families.
Yeah. In
But
our
yeah,
house,
you need to decide how many spoons you've got for the day
yeah.
and manage your own spoons, because I think, I don't want to sound harsh, but you're the one that can control the destiny. You can't control how other people what they're gonna do and what they're gonna think. So figure out your day from your perspective and then go out into the world.
Yeah.
Um,
And
that's
similarly,
what
I know it's
possible.
sort of a recurring message, but it's okay to ask for help. So in our house, we have a rule, only one person is allowed to have a breakdown at a time. So
Oh,
if
it's
you have no spoons left and it's your turn to have a breakdown, then the other people in the household have to rally. Now, that didn't work when my children have graduated from high school and I'm like, I'm the one who's going to be having the breakdown. They're like, sorry, mum, but, no, I called it first. So, we do sort of joke about, well, I've called it. It's my day for the breakdown today. But only one person's allowed to be angry at the system at a time, because
Yep.
one person has to be the one with the cool head that's talking you off the ledge. And if you've got
Yep.
2 people that are angry with the system, that's not going to go well. So you need somebody who's, and call it. I call dibs. It's my turn to rant and rave. And I don't want you to tell me I'm wrong. I don't want you to join in. I want you to say, that sucks, because it sucks, but we can't both rant. So,
Yeah.
and for other people, maybe it works well to have 2 people ranting, or maybe it works well to go, do you know what? Let's put it into perspective. Nope, when I'm ranting, I need you to listen. But you need to work out what works for you.
Absolutely. And remember there's an option for external ranting as well.
Mm,
So if you don't want to release that onto family and friends, find a helpline. Find a free or low cost counseling option. Have a chat to a navigator. Doesn't have to be kind, but we all are always here to listen. But there's other navigation services out there. There are people who can listen and let you just have a vent. And you don't have to know their name, you don't have to see their
yeah.
face. You can just drop and run.
Oh, beautiful. And there's a couple of things there. Obviously, you don't want your family to see everything, but at the same time, I think it's useful for kids to see when adults are struggling, because
Yep.
otherwise they say, well, they've got it together all the time, so I need to have it together all the time. No, it's totally okay to not be okay, and I think it's really healthy for kids to see parents going through that and working through it, and rather than that being behind closed doors. The other thing that came up for me when you were talking earlier is, when you don't want to burden people who are you kind of, I can't find the right way to put this, who are your regular friends. You don't want to lay this all the time on family and friends. And so I think sometimes people can find themselves leaning towards spending time with other people who have got common experiences. But then what can happen with that is then this experience of being a mum or a sister or a parent or a, whatever, of somebody who has this diagnosis can potentially become all of your identity, particularly if you are that parent who's effectively getting a degree on this particular diagnosis and you know more than the experts do. It's really hard not to let it completely take over your whole life.
And I think that's a way of, again, I'm coming back to navigation service. Have someone help you think outside the square of where you can gather your energy. Having a bit of a think about what it is you need. So if it is a group, it might not be diagnosis specific that you find, but you might find that just having a coffee at your local My Time group would be helpful. Their family's 0 to 18 with a diagnosis, but maybe if it's not just about your diagnosis as well, that can be quite helpful. Is it that you sort of reach out to families and say, I need a little bit of a break. I'm going to go do axe throwing for an hour just by myself and then mingling with the axe throwers. That's another way of looking at it. So yeah, think outside the square of where you need to gather energy. Is it
I so love that you
being
went to axe throwing and not going for a walk around the park. So with you.
yes, walking around a park is really not my thing. I don't like getting sweaty. I don't like being hot. I don't like flies going up my nose. I don't like following flies. I don't like the thought of going for a walk. So I really have to build myself up to go for a walk. And then I I have to, like, I would have to send myself around Lake Munga, for example, because
Once you're
it's
halfway
not,
around, you got to keep going.
you got to keep going. It's not like, oh, I'll keep walking in a straight line and come back to my car, for example, because yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm bored already, and I'll go home.
Yeah.
Whereas, find an outlet that is going to work for you. Is it that you just go do a painting class? Is it that you just go to the local library and just sit in there and read a book?
So mine's
Whatever
similar
it is.
to mine's similar to your axe throwing in that I do aerials, because when you are trying to work out how you can wrap your leg around that trapeze bar so you don't fall off and die, you can't think about all of the other things that are weighing. So I call it
Yeah,
extreme mindfulness.
yeah.
But I think the reason that I sort of picked up on that is so often parents of young children, whether they've got a diagnosis or not, mums are told, take time out for you, go for a walk. Oh my God, I'd rather do the dishes. Like, no. Oh, I can't. Yeah, for me, the idea of, just go for a lovely walk. No, I'm the same. It's too hot, it's too cold, it's too windy. There's flies, there's mozzies, there's magpies. No.
Mm.
Throwing axes sounds great.
Yeah. And there's lots of other things you can do. There's the even if you just want to go bowling and, think of someone's face on the pins or, you know, uh, just go, oh, I don't know if it's still around, but I did hear of a place where you could just go smash a vehicle. So
Oh,
they put something that was destined for the junkyard anyway, and you can go take a sledgehammer to it. That seems like a great opportunity for parents and carers
yeah.
just to let out their frustration.
Yeah, and somebody else cleans up the mess.
Yeah, you can just walk away.
And I quite like that it's destined for the junkyard anyway. I struggle with those, the destruction rooms where you can go and smash plates and
Oh,
things like that. I'm
yeah.
like, oh, that just feels wasteful. But if it's going to the
Nice.
junkyard anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, going back to it, it is true. And it's really hard as as a peer navigator to say, yeah, you make sure you look after yourself. But I think part of it is it's okay to look after yourself. It's okay to put you as number one for a part of the day. Um, you're not going to implode if you choose to do something that you want to do.
and the reality is, if you keep going at the pace that so many carers go at and you don't look after yourself, you are going to end up incredibly unwell or potentially dead. And like, not being melodramatic, the
Mm,
risk of you dying is so much higher because carers notoriously don't look after themselves. If you don't stop and look after you and you are literally dead, who is going to look after that person then? So I always try and tell people it's not selfish to take time to look after yourself. You're actually doing this so that you can be there for the other 23 hours of the day to support that person or that family. So you taking 1 hour to look after you is a gift to the family that you're supporting.
absolutely. And go to your appointments.
Okay, I'm
Go.
not good at that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm telling you, go to your appointments, get your annual health checks, do all
Go to
of
the
those things.
dentist.
Yeah, yeah. I'm also putting off getting reading glasses because I'm not emotionally ready for the march of time that my body is experiencing. And I figure it's only sort of vitamin bottles and things that I need to extend my hand out for. So I'm not ready for it yet, but I know that I
It's coming.
next level when I
Yeah.
start to not be able to read. Absolutely. And that's part of my aging journey is that not everyone's eyes last until they're in their 80s and 90s. So it's another step in my journey as an adult. So it's okay. But yeah, going back to the point, because I've gone off track now, is that there is that saying, if you don't make time for wellness, you're gonna have to make time for illness
Yeah.
down the line. And having someone now give you a break, take over some parenting duties for an hour each week is so much better than trying to find emergency respite in the current service offerings that are available to families with children. It's so much easier to organize, yeah, sorry, what is it? The aerials that you
Yeah.
do, finding that time is so much easier than trying to manage information and people so that you can go into hospital and get the procedure that you need to have done.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I
So,
think, one of the things that we share with families, which is another little helpful trick or strategy, really, so that to help you to feel less like you can't take these moments for yourself, is to have an emergency care plan, have a one-page profile, so that all of having an exercise book of appointments, what's happened, questions and answers, so that not all of that information is swimming around in your head. It's down on paper, so that if you need to be somewhere else on a particular day, you can hand the one-page profile, sensory needs, seizure management plans all in a little file and say, I need to go here, here you are. It's
Yeah.
obviously going to be someone trusted. It's not
Yeah.
going to be a
Just the random
random.
bloke who's walking down the street.
Yeah. But knowing that all of that is down on paper for somebody else to take the wheel for a little bit
Yeah.
can be really helpful to give you that confidence and that ability to be able to hand over to other people as well. Because if we feel like the only information holder is ourselves, then obviously it's going to be really hard to hand that over and take the time for ourselves.
Yeah.
But also, like an emergency care plan, that's a little safeguarding, a little insurance that, if you do need to be somewhere else, that the the things that are going to help that little person survive for that period of time is covered by everyone.
And I think, yeah, women in general carry so much of the additional mental load. And this is like mental load on steroids. So, like, say, being able to put down some of that mental load, put it down on paper so it can stop swirling around in your head, and knowing that somebody else can pick it up if they need to. And if you've got it down on paper, my theory is if you prepare for it, you won't need it. So, but it's
Absolutely.
good to have it just in case.
Yep, yep. I think so. I mean, it might be sort of the wrong way to think about it, but yeah, I've never had to use insurance or make a claim on my travel insurance, but I always have it. But it's there. So, sometimes I think, yeah, is it the universe just saying, good on you for having the
That's it.
insurance?
Yep. Pat on the back, you won't need it.
Yeah.
Touch wood.
Yeah.
So, Kiind is a navigation service. I'm going to admit, I hadn't actually heard of a navigation service until our organisation started linking with Kiind. So, tell me a bit about what navigation services actually are.
Yeah. So this service is one support that we offer families.
Mm-hmm.
It is an opportunity to have a chat one-on-one with someone that can link you in with supports and services that you might be needing. So we have, there are 5 of us in the team, and you'll be connected either phone or online. And what navigation is just having a bit of a chat where you're at. What is it that you think you need? What supports and services are you looking for your family? And that navigator being able to fill some of those knowledge gaps. So you don't have to do the 2 hours on the internet. The navigator can take you to those steps of the process that are going to be most helpful for you.
And I suppose one of the things that's hardest when you're actually at any point of this journey is you don't know what you don't know. And how many times have you heard, oh, I wish I'd known that sooner?
Quite a bit we hear that. And even just recently, another mum who had been in the health system for 3 years, and we've been around and been inside the hospital as well. And she said, why have I not heard about your support services? And I think that comes back to that's the biggest, if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
So you kind of need that starting point of, well, these are all of the things that are available, because it might not have been your life up until now. This might be someone's third child that's getting the diagnosis. So if you've never been in those circles, you've never had that conversation, you've never been on the same Facebook groups. Yeah, all of this is completely new. And I think some of that, we touched on it before, the grief or the overwhelm is, what do I do? What is the first step?
Yeah.
I don't even know where to go for this. How do I get help? Like, what is out there?
And
So,
particularly now, it's so so much more difficult to navigate because waiting lists are so much longer, and now I know quite a few service providers won't work with clients if they're not with NDIS, and so all of that comes into it being really challenging for parents for where do I start when there's no kind of here's your first point of call.
yeah. Yeah. So a lot of journeys start with your GP, but that can be problematic as well. Do you have a GP that's supportive, GP that has the knowledge? You having to advocate in those GP meetings as well. Certainly, it's if you are completely new to this, your GP is a great place to start. They can help you to link in with the support services that are available to you. You might be able to get a care plan, so start exploring, depending on your situation, start exploring some options. They can link you in with the child development service. There are wait lists. So I think we do get some referrals from GPs, and I think it's really good to be able to be linked in with a navigation service at that stage as well to find out what's available that aren't service providers. So, what are those free and low cost options out there? Because it is very challenging at the moment to get assessments and appointments. So I think it's great that the community understands that there's some other things out there for them. So linking in with your community, the larger community, your diagnosis community, there's lots of information there. Again, it takes away some of that isolation feeling, can take away some of that overwhelm that you might be feeling, but linking in with those people that have maybe navigated and might be a couple of years ahead of you. Because unfortunately, yeah, at the moment, it's not that you can sort of step into a support service and then take you through this journey. You do need to be a little bit proactive and finding out what supports are available. But there are things that you can do while you're waiting for appointments. You can link to any sort of information provision slash training slash parent support. And there's things out there. Lots of diagnoses have their own association, so they're a great place to start as well. Down syndrome WA, Heart Kids, they can provide some emotional slash informational support while you're waiting as well. And I think it's doing what you can to feel like you're making progress. All of that is going to be helpful. And yeah, finding support services that can help walk you through those things as well.
And I think a lot of the services tend to be focused on the child, which obviously, yes, that makes sense. But there's supports that there needs. Try and get my words out. There needs to be a focus on supports for the parents and for the family as well. So, no man is an island. You can't do this by yourself. There are supports for family members too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's sort of changed with NDIS. And I hope it hasn't come across that that all of my conversation is about it being a difficult journey with NDIS, because there has been some great things for families as well, and that lots of people who maybe have got funding in the past do get funding, and it's great that there is a system out there. But I think that as a system, yeah, I might stop that. I think it might be going into negativity.
The other thing that I'm thinking about as well is the support. So you mentioned before that it might be a first child that's getting a diagnosis, it might be a third child that's getting a diagnosis. I'm imagining that for the siblings of a child growing up with a diagnosis, there's a need for support there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about NDIS as a plan for the individual, that's if the little person is eligible for NDIS or the other supports. Lots of effort, lots of talking, lots of decision making around families is about the person with the diagnosis. And as a sibling myself, there's lots of outcomes for siblings that come along with that journey. So, having whole family supports is going to be really helpful as well. There's some support services out there. So there's things like Siblings Australia have some really nice information on their website. They do have some programs. I think the resources though for younger kiddies, like just having a read of their website could be really helpful as well. Having a think about what support services can support everyone. So there's things that you can tap into that might help everyone. So, if you're talking about counselling, if you're working with an organisation that has EAP, so
Mm-hmm.
employee assistance programs, that is generally for the whole family. So if everybody needs to have a little bit of a talk to someone, there's things like family counselling. So Relationships Australia have lots of lovely services that might suit your needs. But giving everyone, including siblings, an opportunity to have a chat about, what's going on for them, what does life look like for them. In in my case, don't want to talk too much about me, but as the youngest, it was, I was kind of going along for the ride with everybody. So giving everyone an opportunity to to try something they love or be able to share with someone, whether it's in the family or outside the family, all of those emotions that come along with being a sibling as well. I think it's a great opportunity. Yeah, because support services come along for the person with the diagnosis, but there's not too much available. But we can make time, we can give siblings an opportunity to share how they're feeling. And there are a sort of growing number of supports for siblings as well. There's things like groups, there's camps that are available that include the whole family, might be day programs. I'm thinking, cystic fibrosis, because the young people with cystic fibrosis can't necessarily meet together, they have opportunities for siblings. So they have programs for siblings to come together and have a bit of one-on-one time
Yeah.
where it's all about them.
Yeah, because I imagine that's really difficult as well. So much of a family's life is about the appointments for the child with a disability, or and everything's around safeguarding and advocating for them. That when those siblings are there and they're there's no time for them because everything's focused on the other kids, or they're there while parents are educating people about ACROD parking again, and why are people looking at us again, and why am I having to have this conversation or do this, or why am I having to be more grown up than everybody else because
Mm,
I'm the sibling of somebody with disability. All of those things it's just extra weight, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's nice that, it's reflected in, like Carers WA have the Young Carers program.
Mm.
It's acknowledging that, yeah, you are putting in a little bit of work in. You
Mm.
are doing a little bit of not necessarily parenting, but you're doing some family work
Yeah.
so that we can all get through our day or, have a great life together.
Yeah.
And so acknowledging that there's young carers out there, that you do a great job. Here's an opportunity to have a bit of fun with some other young carers, share your experiences. The sibling might like to be on a sort of young carer type, group,
Yeah.
because it's in acknowledging them that, yeah, they've had a bit of a different
Mm.
um, pathway growing up, but there's so many lovely things that come out of being a sibling as well. So yes, we talk about them being, having lots of roles and doing things that, you know, kids their own age, their peers don't have to do. But it also means that a lot of siblings come out as great advocates, come out as great leaders, really have that empathy
Mm.
and are able to, yeah, do some really awesome things
Yeah.
because of that experience.
Yeah. I was just sort of thinking, like, as parents, you go through that grief process. Well, siblings wouldn't have that, but it's their life is just still very much impacted by it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's a change in here, it's a different journey. And I think acknowledging that with them can
Mm.
be really helpful and giving them outlets so that they can be, just a kid as well.
Yeah. And
And some,
I'm also imagining that when you talked about having those those sentences that are ready for when people say the things that get said often to you, working with your kids to have those things as well. So, growing up, we grew up with a family that had a child with a disability and a younger sibling, and my brother was friends with the younger sibling. So seeing the younger sibling constantly getting asked, "What's wrong with such and such?" or "Why does he, why is he like that?" And for the younger sibling, it was like, "Oh, that's just his name. That's just the way he is." And I think sometimes kids don't see any difference, which is beautiful. But then because they don't see any difference, then why are people asking me about that? It's just and that's quite confronting because they're not ready for that.
Yeah.
It's just lovely. It's nice that they don't see that. So.
I think so too. And, I know of a young person who goes to school but is part of a ed support unit. And, I've heard stories about, his friends who are girls in class and how everyone wants to help him with what he needs in class. And I just think there's beautiful opportunities out there for sharing diagnosis, making it so that it's not a difference. It's no, in a way, it's a difference. It's not a deficit or a challenge. It's just a difference. And how awesome is it that that little person is able to do A, B, and C?
Yeah.
Being able to share that we're all part of the community. We all have a lot to give, no matter what labels that we have and we might need to have, or a family might not want to have for us, but it's there. How lovely it is that we can create that information so that everyone can be included, that everyone has something to give to the community and to others, and they might just need a different way of being able to give that, and giving them space and time and abilities to communicate if they don't have that for themselves or need a little help with that. That can just be little changes to how we work, how we communicate, how we move about in the community will give people, and a lot more people, opportunities to be able to have ordinary lives in a way.
So if you met somebody who's, I'm just going to go with child, whose child has been given a diagnosis, what are your words of advice to that family that are just fresh and raw?
Gosh, in a way, from a kind perspective, we would be saying, we got you. You're now part of a community that you can link into at any stage through this journey, even when they become adults. I think give yourself time to process the information you've been given. So whether that's grief or you just need a bit of time to even get to that point of grief, like analyze that information, give yourself some time, gather your tribe around you, build connections around the diagnosis, and reach out to those people that might be able to provide you with support. So whether that's a service or information or linkage to other families, so that you can do this with other people and have a chat to your GP, see what services are available for all of you as a family, and seek out those first steps. Because as I said earlier, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So reach out to those people that can provide you with the information and just take one day at a time. And I think really just give yourself a big warm hug and know that you got this, and that you can reach out and lean on those services that are available to you.
Beautiful. I'm just going to add a couple of things that came up for me while you were talking. So know that vulnerability isn't weakness. It can actually be a real strength. So sharing what's going on for you, you don't feel like you need to just, we sort of joke about it, just push it down, just bury it down. Don't bury it down. Seriously, it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to show that you're not okay in safe spaces. Also, you are your child's best advocate. You know your child best. Be your child's advocate. And I agree, go and see your GP. But if your GP is a complete numpty, find a new GP, because you need somebody on your team. And there is enough that feels like it's against you in this world when you're navigating this. You need somebody who's in your corner, not somebody who you're going to be fighting with. So find someone who's going to be a warrior with you and next to you, and not somebody who you need to overcome as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what about if it's the friend or family of somebody, so extended family of somebody who has recently got a diagnosis? What would you say to that friend and family who don't know how to react, or don't know how to, like, what should I say? What shouldn't I say?
Mm. I think I think the first step would be do a little bit of research yourself around the diagnosis. Have a bit of a think about what your friend might have experienced already. And I think just listen. Listen to what they're sharing and provide them with that warm hug that they might need. Ask what they need. Um, I was talking about it recently where I feel like, yeah, not a great friend when I do the whole just reach out, tell me what you need. I think we can reframe that to, I've got this time free. I can help you with something. What would it be? If I
Yeah.
could help you with something, what would it be?
Yeah.
So I think putting yourself in your own shoes, having a think about, putting yourself in their shoes, having a think about what that grief might look like for them, listening and being there for what they might need. At that stage, if it's really new, they might not need anything. But just if you can, yeah, think about what the diagnosis might be meaning for them. Give yourself a little bit of time to investigate yourself on what it could look like, and just be there.
Yeah. And comments like, why don't you put your child in an institution? They shouldn't even be inside thoughts, but
Mm,
at best or at worst, make them an inside thought. Those words should not come out of your mouth to a family ever.
yeah.
That should just be a number one rule, should go without saying. And yeah, I think it's also useful to know that we talk about autism being a spectrum. I think just about every diagnosis is a spectrum. So,
Yeah.
you can't say, so you mentioned before about Down syndrome support services. No two children with Down syndrome are going to be the same. They're not going to be impacted the same. So I think that was one of the fears for me, was I didn't want to say the diagnosis out loud, because everybody would get this mental picture and be making assumptions. So don't make assumptions, find out what's actually going on. And yeah, I think help them love the child that there is rather than what they've missed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any
that's good.
final thoughts today?
I think for those parents that are out there, just be kind to yourself. Give yourself a warm pat on the back, a warm hug. Know that you're just a legend. You're doing a great job. You're doing a job that's bigger than what you signed on for. And know that there is support out there. There's services out there that might be able to help you to get a spoon back so that you can continue on this journey.
Yeah.
And know that you've got time. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and you've got time to do all of this. So give yourself a break. Know that you are an expert knowledge holder and you got this.
Beautiful. And I think that's, you are doing a great job, and it might not be, the reason you're doing a great job is because there's no other option. You know, people are
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't know how you do it, because there's no other option.
Yeah.
But you are doing it, and you are staying afloat, and you're doing a great job. And exactly what you say, eat the elephant one bite at a time. It's a
Yeah.
marathon, not a sprint. Just take it one day at a time and be kind to yourself. And if you've only got 4% to give, and you give that 4%, you've given 100% today.
Yeah. Pick that day off as 100%.
Yeah. And tomorrow's a new day,
Yeah.
or the next minute's a new minute. So fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Teresa. We went all over the place, but I
Yeah.
really appreciate your time chatting with us today.
No worries, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll include links to Kiind, to Siblings Australia, and to Carers WA in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.